Our final speaker tonight, before we open up to questions, is David Graham. David is Head of Digital Strategy at Havas Media. He has previously spent time at Starcom MediaVest Group, as well as MSN UK and Ask Jeeves. Wow. So he's going to be talking a little bit more about what the audiences do around brands specifically and content, and what the best practice is for engaging with them. So please welcome David.
Thank you for inviting me here this afternoon. So we've heard quite a lot this afternoon about apps and the tablets that they sit on, and there's no denying that the tablet is definitely the gadget of the moment. Globally, about 20 million of these units were shifted in the last quarter, and even in some research that we did at Mobex, which is a digital mobile agency that is part of Havas, we found that 12% of UK adults now own a tablet of some device of some brand or another. But it's fair to say that the tablet isn't the only connected device out there. It's just one of a range of a new generation of connected devices that are finding their way into our home. Connected TVs, set-top boxes, games, entertainment consoles are all part of this next generation. And it's estimated by the clever folks over at Bain & Co. that 60% of all US and Western European households will have at least one connected device in their homes by 2014. So what's fueling this move towards this, this presence of connected devices wherever we go? Well, it's really down to four things. The first thing is that ubiquitous high-speed internet access or broadband, the thicker pipes, the higher quality of content that can now be squeezed down them. This is a given in developing markets, but even in markets like China, it's estimated by 2014, 70% of urban Chinese will have high-speed internet access. Massive investment in data centers around the world, and the opportunity to host content in the cloud means that we can pretty much access content wherever we want and from whatever device, wherever we are. Advances in data analytics means that our activities can be analysed and preempted so that we're served up more relevant content, and that the whole experience is more kind of engaging and more enticing. And then fourthly, the huge development in the user interface just makes the whole experience really just more kind of human and real. Think Xbox Connect, touch screens, and even voice recognition, which in itself has a little way to go. So all these factors have coalesced to provide a kind of ideal environment in which media owners and content providers can offer a richer and more connected experience. It just so happens that the tablet seems to be the thing that is stealing the show at the moment in this converging world. And that's hardly surprising when we find that 65% of people that own a tablet believe that it will become a common device of the future. And not only do they have they've already got one, they're already planning on buying another within the next 6 months. So we've got all these new devices and all these new connected devices, but it doesn't necessarily follow that we're suddenly consuming any more media than we used to. I don't know about you, I've pretty much maxed out on my media consumption, and it's more about the mix of that consumption that's interesting and that's changing. Indeed, there have been winners and losers, in this new world, and sad to say that the newspapers or the printed newspapers are faring not so well, with a 30% decline, and books suffering even more with a 35% decline. And this is all at the expense of that bad boy, the tablet. But that's not really the nub of it. And the interesting part of all this is seeing how quickly we default to different devices depending on the task in hand. And this is what I think absolutely represents an opportunity. If we can align content and experiences that are more relevant to the device and that are more associated with the task or the action that we're trying to encourage. As I've just said, I think people are pretty much at their limit in terms of volume of what they can consume. And the Bain research that I referred to earlier found that less than a third of respondents said they would dedicate any more time to entertainment, even if it was a connected experience. So it's not so much a story about getting people to do more, rather it's an opportunity to make the time that they do spend more exciting, more memorable, more enthralling, and ultimately improve the whole content experience itself. So whether people are dual screening or simply using the telly as background noise, let's have a look at this device default behavior a bit more and try and understand where we've got better chances of making connections and making these connected experiences happen. Going back to the Mobex research that we did last month, we found that these were, in fact, the most popular activities carried out across the three main connected devices at home, that being the tablet, the laptop, and the phone. Now, that's not necessarily surprising in and of itself, but what gets interesting is when you see where this is happening. So the tablet is where we do most of these, so the average number of tasks that are completed on any of these devices, the tablet is the one that wins out. What is interesting even more is where you start to see, when you break this down, people's preferences by task, if you like. So you've got there the tablet pretty much winning out on everything bar banking. So if you like, the PC is kind of our PC or laptop is kind of our office, our admin machine. The phone, no surprise, is the one that is our communication device, the one we talk on and keep in touch. And the tablet is kind of our fun machine. Actually, Microsoft did some research a few months ago called Meet the Screens, and they likened the tablet to a wizard because it just did really cool stuff. People just opened their tablet and just expected to have really rich immersive experience and just to be utterly entertained. And I think there's also an element of ease in the fact you can just open it and it's on and you don't have to power it up. The point here is that the people sit in front of the telly and they do all of this stuff, and I think this has been alluded to before. And by and large, there's not often any link between what they're doing in front of their lap and what's being shown on the TV. In the long run, connected TVs may be the thing that gets people to sit up on the edge of the sofas and get involved. But in the meantime, we can deliver quality connected experiences by taking advantage of what people are doing already and optimizing around the activity and the device they prefer. Addressing the challenge in this way makes it easier to extend the narrative that starts on the telly and to deepen and extend that experience in a way that appears just kind of more natural rather than shoehorning it in. And this is where second screen apps that you've heard about already, like GetGlue or Yahoo's Internow or Mizo or Zbox, are focusing their efforts as they embed into their platforms common activities like checking prices and shopping on Amazon or playing a social game. They're piggybacking on established behavioural slipstreams, stuff that we do already, and not only encouraging to get us involved, but just making it a whole lot more easier and joined up. In doing so, they're removing many of the kind of unnecessary steps and collapsing that time lag between being introduced and to action to get maximum value out of that initial TV exposure. Another good example, and you've seen it already, is the eBay watch with, and as Paul said, a really interesting app that accompanies your TV experiences and allows you to buy what you're seeing on the telly. So this takes us from this scenario of a connected or of a dual screen scenario to more of a kind of synced up scenario, and there's definitely a distinction to be made. But actually, synced up screen activity is nothing new. Syncing up paid search with your TV schedule speaks to a connected experience, and that's something that really is a kind of a hygiene factor these days in media planning. Research from Nielsen published last month found that 39% of men look for information related to a TV show that they're watching. 24% of women are inclined to seek for information related to the TV commercial that they've seen, while 62% of teenagers will default to social media sites for that source of content. So knowing that, and if you have a specific audience, a predominantly male, female, or younger audience, these sorts of things can inform how what your synced up dual screen strategy might look like. So whether you're a brand or a media owner, all that related key messaging and all that related content should be optimized for search around the time of transmission. But these days it's not just Google that we're using to look for information. We're going to other sources as well. People are checking Twitter for real-time info. Some people are checking Instagram for latest pictures, and others might be checking Wikipedia or IMDb for more information on the actor. So this means that your social activity, your online content, even your CRM needs to be aligned and optimized in this way. And don't let all that tablet buzz colour your view. Viacom's social TV research, also from this month, found that although there's all this hype, it's really the smartphone that's dominating this TV activity, especially the social TV app space, with 82% of phones being used to access TV apps. Also, looking at more web-based or HTML apps, we've got 52% of people using their phone and their tablet to access. So, in certain scenarios, it's very much the phone and not always the tablet. So, from a media perspective, this means that mobile's got to be on your plan. And from a content perspective, as a minimum, the content experience needs to work across all these devices. And at best, it takes advantage of the devices, especially things like new smartphones or tablets, where you have an opportunity to be more creative around the user interface with things like tip and zoom and pinch and swipe. These may all be really small things, but actually they can make all the difference and make you stand out. So MTV understand this, and it's interesting to see that for them, most of their audience, an iPad is probably beyond their means, and that most of their audience are accessing the content via their mobile. And the mobile is very much still dominant. So their second screen app, which is also called Watch With, like the eBay one, is a single version, and it works across both iPad and an iPod or iPhone. So in time they might build an iPad version, but for now what they've done is you can see the iPhone one is on the left and the iPad one is on the right. The iPad one on the right is a little bit larger, but it's more or less a similar experience. So they're sort of prioritizing and understanding what their customers are doing, how they're accessing that content, and what sort of devices they're using. So what do people want from a synced up experience? Well, I think it comes down to three things. First of all, they want to be included, and I'm glad that Paul thought that the Star Player app was a fantastic example of this. They want to feel that they're part of something bigger. Being able to chat with friends or other people watching the same program came out as the #1 priority on that Viacom research that I mentioned earlier. Interestingly, no one chat option dominates. People chat through apps, people chat through Facebook, people text. They're all equally popular, so there's a kind of a level playing field there. But this example, I think, stands out. Paul's already talked about it, but what I thought was really interesting about this is it tapped into two really interesting insights. Heineken wanted to sort of amplify their sponsorship of UEFA, and the thing about UEFA Cup is a lot of the matches happen midweek, and so guys who want to watch the football tend to be watching it at home alone, so they feel disconnected, and it's a rather kind of singular experience. The other insight was that actually when people get distracted, the thing that distracts them is their phone. So make the distraction the thing that draws them back in, and this is what they did, and they built Star Player, and it was hugely successful. Paul talked about all the games and that you could do within it, and it was all amplified through Facebook to draw more people into that experience. So being included, I think, is a really important thing to think about. People want to feel closer to the action. They want to feel feel part of what's going on. So they want to be connected. Now, this can often be satisfied with activities like the crew or the cast member tweeting while the show is airing, or through allowing viewers to interact in real time with what's happening on the screen. The Prometheus trailer did this in a really innovative way, in that it ran a hashtag prior to the movie. Now, a hashtag isn't anything new, but actually what was interesting is they then took some of those tweets and put those into the ad when it broke, and that was instantly people being involved in it. So not only were people being connected, it was instant gratification, and for a few people it was fame as well. And the final point is around being rewarded, and I think this for me is a bit of a sweet spot. If the first two are all about deepening that interaction during the programming, this is about kind of extending it beyond. And this can be done in many ways, but the best way is kind of is rewarding viewers, either giving them exclusive content that they might not be able to find from doing a web search, or actually just plain old-fashioned giving them points or discounts or vouchers towards the product. During the college basketball March Madness, this is what Unilever did, and they partnered with Vigil, which is another one of these platforms which rewards you in terms of points for interacting or viewing content. In this case, it was Dove's Journey for Comfort, which were a bunch of videos that included famous basketball players, and then it linked through to a landing page which had live game stats, and it even linked through to Amazon, so if you wanted to buy the product, you could buy it there. So not only can we sync up the experience, to provide a richer experience, in doing so also creates a feedback loop that can be measured in real time. From an advertiser's perspective, not only are you getting the coverage from the airtime, you can now track and measure what happens next and attribute value to those individual interactions. So while it all might seem a bit daunting, some things haven't changed. To me, it still feels like TV is where it all starts. It's that kind of flick of the first domino that sets everything off in that kind of cascade of different directions. And while we can't solve for all of those directions, we can work with this sync screen scenario to guide and encourage the flow down paths where actions are linked and can be measured. But this requires much closer collaboration between creative, media, technology, developers, social, brands, and media owners to allow these ideas to become more than a 30-second TVC supported by some search and some rich media. Now that's easier said than done, and right now this all might feel kind of ahead of the curve stuff, but audiences adapt quickly, and the tablet is evidence of that. And this is only going in one direction. And that's me. So thank you.
Thank you, David. If my panellists would like to take a seat up on the stage, and we shall open up to questions. I'll stand here. I find it quite fascinating, and I would say this coming from the games industry, representing the games industry, that our concept of audiences is very much built around that screen in the living room, which is the TV, and the broadcast and the scheduled TV or catch-up on demand, whatever it might be. Are you worried about, at all, our insight into what's going to be happening, or our lack of insight into what's going to happen to formats, and our transformation of entertainment experiences in the living room once every TV is connected to the internet, and we have gesture devices? You know, they become gesture-related devices. You look at what Sesame Street's Microsoft Studio is doing with Sesame Streets, and that's completely transforming what an entertainment experience and format looks like. Yet we've heard very little about that audience behaviour in games. Are you worried, panellists?
I'm quite excited. I think as marketing grew out of sales, and you couldn't go back to just direct selling, for example. And social media, and the way that we use it and the way that we engage with it, is fundamentally transformed how we behave. We expect to have an opinion about things. We expect to get our hands stuck in and get involved. And I think it's an exciting transformation.
Well, I mean, I'd echo it. I mean, I think it's, as I sort of tried to allude in the presentation, there's so many exciting things that are happening in this space, and it's a fantastic place and a fantastic medium to work in right at the moment. And I think that we often talk about the internet, the technology that's coming through, enabling TV, sort of supercharging that experience. And I think it will do. I think it will allow the TV to do a lot of extra jobs. It'll obviously remain central to the fantastic, branding, etc. But I think it'll start to do a lot of extra jobs, a lot of other marketing communication activities as well.
Like allow us to play games.
Yeah, and lots of extra direct response stuff, and I think it's got there's many more platforms for it to sort of seep into.
There are quite a lot of examples of that synced up scenario of where gaming is the thing that draws people in around specific ads and applications on that second screen. So that is being used as a mechanism to get people to interact. But yeah, I think the more that connected TVs are out there, and it's not just about this being the connected device and that being the kind of the dumb device. The minute that becomes more intelligent and more connected, I just think it opens up massive opportunity to pull, to be creative, whether it's using gaming as your mechanic or whatever.
Yeah.
I just think it's I'm excited to see what happens.
I mean, Paul, particularly in your at the end of your presentation, your son was playing Minecraft. What is his primary screen? And is this actually something that we're sort of not really sort of getting our heads around in terms of younger generations?
He would never. He very rarely watches linear TV. He would typically prefer to watch a stream, perhaps a live stream, but much more on a PC or an environment where he can share experiences with his friends on his headset at the same time. But I think it's a bit like, sorry, I keep talking about my children. It's like my daughter, who has no concept of a computer not connected to the internet. To her, a computer not connected to the internet doesn't work. And I think we will progress to that stage where a TV not connected to the internet will just be seen as, in some way, not fully functioning. That doesn't mean that everything we do will be on streamed or online media. It's more that it just becomes part of what that device does.
Okay.
So I just would add that kids have always not watched television. They've watched less television than everybody else, and it's a life stage thing.
I've heard that argument before.
Yeah, as you have more, as you have more responsibility, you have a family.
Yeah.
When you get to 9 o'clock at night, you probably just want to hit that couch. Really. So I think
or play Call of Duty. Yeah. I think it's interesting the stats.
Whilst you're watching the telly.
I think it's really interesting the stats. So, I came from the TV industry as well. I was commissioner at BBC and at Channel 4, and I find the stats, the interesting slide you put up about scheduled TV viewing from Barb versus iPlayer and minutes. Now, of course, what we remember about anything that's IP connected, we actually know unique user, and we know much more about our audiences. With Barb, it's based on 5,000 households. What can I say? I'm going to open it up to some questions.
I think
I have one here and one here. So one here first. We have a microphone. If you just say who you are and where you're from, please.
Bruce Grove from OnLive. I just wanted to build on what you just said there. So you put up that stat which I thought was interesting. iPlayer is 1% of viewing versus basically what we're seeing as real-time viewing. That's 1% that's growing really quickly in a world of not all the devices are connected, it's not ubiquitous, internet's not there yet, we don't have smart TVs everywhere. How quickly do you think that's going to grow?
Well, I think it will grow, but lots, not just the iPlayer, but lots of the TVOD stats. Or I'm talking about people viewing long-form, professionally produced content, television programs. All of the research that I've seen, including Barb, and I'll come on to that a bit in a minute. Gee whiz. All of the research that I've seen shows that these services have quite a large reach, but reach is very different than volume. And if there might be. See, this is number wanging in a way. This is typical number wanging. If I could say that there's probably a stat, I don't know what it is, but 64% of people who have access to that technology have used it in the last month. That's great, and that's a brilliant statistic. But that doesn't tell you the volume. And I think a lot of the VOD and catch-up stuff, people dip into it, and the reason they dip into it is because they've missed something and they want to catch up with it. There is some idiosyncratic behaviour, people binging on 100 episodes of The Wire in one weekend, but generally people want to catch up. That's why it's called catch up.
Any other comments from the...
Mine would only be go back to the stats about consumer behaviour. We find when we're talking to a lot of clients, they're talking about doing stuff on iOS or doing stuff on connected TV. That's not necessarily what the ordinary person is doing. So I think we have a very accelerated view because we are in media in the southeast of England in a prosperous country. We deal with countries where iOS penetration is negligible, yet it's a fantastic device.
Okay, question here.
Need this. I work in this media section. We do games and TV and all that sort of stuff, but I'm confused at the moment. We're working with a lot of broadcasters, we're also with production houses. Who owns the second screen? Who actually owns the content on the second screen? Because you've got problems with geographic locations, you've got the broadcasters wanting to own it because, like, the BBC could have a programme, but the broadcaster wants to put adverts, not the broadcaster, the production company wants to put adverts on the second screen. Who owns the content? Isn't this going to be a bit of a confusion in the future of actually who owns the second screen content? Because stuff like ZBox plugs into other people's content that doesn't belong to them. Isn't this going to cause confusion for the future?
So is this sort of a barrier to cross-collaboration and creative collaboration?
Boundaries as well, because when it's sold, the rights change, but there will be no geographic boundaries. How's it going to play out?
The only thing I'd say is I know that Sky own 10% of ZBox, so that's about the only bit I know about ownership.
And that therefore gives them really rich data and analytics around what people are viewing to be able to apply. So I think where we should be concerned in this space is to look at ownership and partnerships like that. So as new tools become available, looking at perhaps who are the organisations that are either connecting with them. From my perspective, I don't necessarily think that ownership of second screen is the issue. When we talked about the polar bears debate, that's a third screen already, and that second screen device will change depending on your age, demographic, and geolocation. So, not an easy question to answer.
But isn't it just who owns the data? Because both Paul and Tiffany talked about data, and we always hear about data as a new oil, and opening up APIs, which would be absolutely fantastic. But isn't the point that actually broadcasters or production companies or whoever it might be, the media owners, want to keep that data to themselves?
Well, a lot of the social data that's collected and social data analytics is only open social data. We're not talking about dipping behind the Facebook firewall here. We're talking about open data that has
God forbid.
Open channels, yes, we won't go there. So essentially, it's public domain data. It's just that you have the opportunity to, filter that and gain some insights that are going to help your audiences, your program makers, your commissioners to be able to do something useful with them.
Great. Okay, question here. You have the mic, and then we'll go here.
Howard Scott from BIMA. Just sort of asking the panel, really, with Sky creating, and I can't remember the name because it's not totally my ballpark, but an IP delivered only linear TV service, which I saw mentioned a few weeks ago, that they're going to not broadcast over satellite. They'll offer this as an internet only service. How does that start to blur the boundaries between a catch-up service like video on demand and a linear service? And then what does that mean, which presumably the reason why Skybox has got he's rolling his eyes already. Skybox has got a phone cable in the back right to track what you're watching. Surely when Sky deliver it all over IP, they'll be able to track everything. That must be a good thing for them, and that relates to APIs a bit, I guess.
I mean, Sky have the advantage of their customers. They have a lot of customers and not just consumers of their content. They have both. So if they have a lot of data on their own customers, and this is the interesting thing, which I think is sometimes misunderstood about servers and about the fact that on the iPlayer you can see if a server has talked to another server and how long that's talked to. You can see what the machines are doing. It tells you nothing about the individual at all. Not about who they are, what they are, nothing, hardly anything at all. I think we're getting almost further away from understanding real consumer behaviour than actually closer to it. Sky have got a fantastic opportunity because they have obviously all of that data on their customers, so they're going to be able to use that.
But is that really true? I mean, you know, Channel 4, people like that, you know, they are gathering a lot of data.
No, they're gathering
around...
that's people that have actually signed up and stuff like that. So you can harvest your own data set. What I mean is the kind of pure streaming and servers. That just tells us about machines. It doesn't tell us about people whatsoever. It tells us about some sort of action that's taken place. And there's lots of bots and robots and all sorts of strange things happening out there as well. So we don't really know exactly what's going on.
Any other comments from the panel before I move on? So we had a question here in the blue, and then the lady in the blue.
So I'll try and make a quick point about ZBox, a couple of points about Neil's story, and then a question, if I can remember all that. So on ZBox, the challenge of the business model for all those guys is that they're not part of the broadcast community and they don't own the rights. They don't have the right to put.
You mean it's not a walled garden?
Well, they just don't have the rights to put brands up, or even the logo and so on. So we're seeing them start to collaborate more closely, which means they have to concede more of the business, of the pie, if you like, to those guys. That's getting more interesting. But it's a real challenge for the independents. I think for ZBox and those guys, they're very, very smart to get across that. Neil, you just now, again, but also in your piece, which I enjoyed very much, you the same way that you talk up the broadcast story very well, you also talk down the data story, I think, too much. There's some extraordinary things happening around data and analytics gradually. And I thought that, and I'll make 2 points about your slides and then a question. I noticed, as you were showing, you remember that little one you showed about the history of technology and impact on television? You were saying essentially it's always been changing, right? Now, the middle point, 2000, had 10 points to its right. Big changes over 10 years. There are 10 points to its left over 70 years. So there's a 7 times acceleration in the pace of change, and probably more than that. It's probably because
I just couldn't find it. I only had half a day to do it, so you know.
It's a little thought. You use the slide to make a point, and I think it just demonstrates that one can do anything with statistics.
Every month there's something new coming out.
And I don't mean to be rude. I did enjoy your story very well, very much. The second one is the point you made. You're looking to make about the advertising industry or the marketing community, I think, versus real people. And the still staggering 82% on Facebook, I think, on one side, and 94 on the other. But 2 of the numbers, one was Pinterest, one was Instagram. I think Instagram was at 24%, Pinterest at 11 or something. That's across the States, I think. They're a year old, those companies. So I think what's interesting is the direction of travel, which I think you understate in your piece. I'm going to come to my question in a minute.
Yes.
But I do apologise.
You should have been on the platform, I think.
But we know that television viewing is increasing, you're quite right. But around the broadcasters, the main broadcaster is going down. So ITV, a couple of decent years, but essentially steady decline. So it's becoming much more multi-channel, much more broken up. The question then is, are we all headed towards all live television, essentially sports, events, and talent, and essentially being that can connect and becoming sort of ghetto for those sorts of shows? Not a very effective question, but
no.
But isn't it about experiences at the end of the day? That's what we're moving to.
Event television.
That is my point, really. To be honest with you, that chart, the infographic, is a load of rubbish, really, isn't it? I mean, I just found it.
Thanks for sharing.
That was my kind of point. That was my point. There is so much rubbish research out there, so much useless stuff, where people don't look at the source, people don't look at the provenance of the sample, people don't look at how the question's being asked. People don't care. They just go, I want a number, I want it quick and dirty, and I want it now. And that is probably asked by his mates in the office on a mobile platform. I asked internet users if they like the internet. Oh, well, there you go, brilliant. So don't take any of that for granted. Take the Barb numbers for granted, and take the other big, like the iPlayer numbers for granted. They're big numbers, and they're really useful. But do we all want to connect all of the time? When we do, it's brilliant, and I do sometimes. But a lot of the time, I just want to sit back and watch Homeland. And other people do want to watch Homeland and say what a great thing it was on ZBox, but not everybody, and not the mass either. Not the mass of people. If you look at UKOM's research, which is brilliant research, last month 35% of the UK population didn't go online, didn't access online. That's 20 million people. That's 20 million wallets. So we've got to get this. That's my whole point. You've got to get the context of the whole of the UK. social media is brilliant for researching audiences. It's fantastic, hard to reach people and all that sort of stuff, but it's unstructured data that you can't build and model representative samples on the top of it and say, therefore 84% of the public did this or did that. You just can't do it. You can't do that to the fire hose of data that's coming at you.
But I also agree that I think that there's lots of holes in the things that we're looking at, you know, which is my point about the games industry, the biggest, fastest growing creative industry in the world. And we haven't sort of talked about it really in terms of the living room. Okay, I'm aware of time. It is 7 minutes past. I'm going to leave you to have a glass of wine and cover the speakers. So thank you very much.